It's okay though.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Oh, we're live already. Good.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you
So
so
what's going
much.
on?
Nothing much. Just busy writing,
Good.
producing, staying
Good.
informed, staying hydrated with all this happening.
Good.
But I'm glad we're having this conversation because I know with what's happening with the Obama Center and all of the celebrations with that, this is a perfect time to talk about just his foreign policy legacy and
Yeah.
your thoughts on that. I mean, there's have been some reflection on his presidency I've seen in the news reports and even controversies around the center. But I think more
Right.
importantly is the foreign policy because this is just a critical moment right now. I think, like we stated earlier, Americans are really seeing the impact of how foreign policy impacts their lives, foreign policy decisions in Washington. So I'm really excited to talk to you today. So yeah. I guess my first question is just kind of reflecting on his presidency and where the Democrats go from here. If they get back to the office, like what do you think are some of the good? If you were to give an overview of his policy, what would be some of like the great things, some of the great policy decisions that he's made on the foreign policy side, and then things that we shouldn't carry over into the next administration?
Yes. Thank you for that question. Well, I would say that it's a mixed record, but it's more favorable than not to where we can
Mm-hmm.
carry on his legacy and a future strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll also talk to you about how it relates to what happened recently in New York with the politics happening,
Mm-hmm.
which is very significant. And I will tell you why, because I'm a
Yeah.
Columbia University grad.
Mm-hmm.
So is President Obama. We both studied international relations, international affairs at Columbia. So
Hmm.
uh, what so it, and what's fascinating is connecting that dot as far as how it applies to politics now, especially when it comes to the Middle East
Mm-hmm.
and the growing group of people in New York that is starting to embrace more of socialism, democracy. Many of them are actually located in the Columbia University area.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
that's kind of like the brainchild of the, I guess, the incubator of some of these ideas.
yeah, and I think it's extended from when October 7th happened. Many of those activists in that area registered as Dems, and
Mm-hmm.
then they ended up, becoming more energized with the Mayor
Right.
Mandani. And
Mm-hmm.
then it carried on into the congressional races that happened in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in that area. So that area has become an epic center of learning or trying to figure out foreign policy, especially when it comes to Middle East policy. And what's fascinating is Mayor Mandani's father has tenure at Columbia University, so he has ties
Okay.
there. President Obama does too. He's a graduate. I do too, and I studied Middle East policy at Columbia, so it's fascinating to see um, how a young woman came there, was, oh my God, just extremely anti-Israel, and had and she's also Muslim and had a really strong stance on it as far as the platform of it, which I don't agree on some of it, and um,
Mm-hmm.
and then that ended up helping her win that seat in that same area, Columbia University. So I don't know. It's like the epic center there, and it played a part,
Mm-hmm.
and foreign
Mm-hmm.
policy played a part to where this is Charlie Rangel's legacy.
Yeah.
Um, that's his area, and it goes from Charlie Rangel to Espaillat, and now this new female Afro Latina Muslim, and
Hmm.
just her, yeah. So it's quite interesting. I'm not saying it's favorable or unfavorable, but just it's interesting how it all is all developing over time. Hmm.
Do you see the Democratic Party kind of splitting at this moment, at this juncture in politics with this Democratic Social, the DSA? I think that's what they're called. Yeah.
I what I see in New York City, there's a growing split. I don't see it in its totality nationwide. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I I just endorsed a female up in a female veteran national security expert named Kate Conley up in New York 17 congressional district, and we didn't have any of that happen. So I think it's just warped right in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
where it was able to kind of highly concentrate itself in Manhattan and other parts too, Queens and Brooklyn, but just mainly I would say in Manhattan. It didn't really extend itself in the Bronx and other parts. So it's an area that does not reflect the rest of the nation, in my opinion, or the Democratic Party in its totality. But you can't ignore it because there's something going on in terms of gain. And anything that Mandani does, the media gives so much attention to where it aggrandizes it, it makes it look bigger than what it is. So
Oh,
I
okay.
think that so um, is reflective of it too. And then I would say because it's probably going to grow, the Democratic Party has to figure out what is this, how do we work with them
Mm-hmm.
involving policy, um, especially if they start to gain quantity in the House of Representatives, right?
Right.
So we'll see. It's not there yet in terms of numbers, in my opinion. But it is something that you should not ignore, and you're going to have to see how to work with them. Hmm.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely I would say Columbia was definitely his like activist period of his life, and particular Chicago was another activist period. So those the ideals were probably shaped up in Columbia and then manifested
Yeah,
itself to Chicago. But so let's get into the
that
nitty-gritty when it
is
comes to his foreign policy. So
right.
I thought the
Okay.
Senate, I was quite surprised in the news cycle when I heard the Senate was gonna put some guardrails on the Trump administration when it comes to the Iran war. But now I'm seeing headlines stating that, Trump blows up the Bill Cassidy over Iran war powers, and that was in the heel. And then I've just seen some walk back of rebuke of Trump over this Iran war. So when you reflect upon President Obama's approach to dealing with Iran in the Middle East, and you had a 16 point Substack piece that you published about our Middle East policy. So when you talk about that, can you reflect upon how Obama's approach was when it came to Middle East policy versus Trump's approach and what we need to be doing moving forward?
Yeah, I, I definitely will because I'm going to tell you something that most people can't say.
Mm-hmm.
One reason why I ended up publishing about the Iran deal is because I am a certified expert in this. 11
Mm-hmm.
years ago, when Obama first came out with the idea of having this Iran deal, they reached out to experts like me and many
Mm-hmm.
others, Army veterans who have frontline experiences in the Middle East, asking us, can you show support for the Iran deal? I did my assessment, and I'm actually on record of it. You look at Win Without War
Mm-hmm.
link. There's me, a whole bunch of experts, elected officials, international organizations or organizations that all show support from elected officials involving Cory Booker, Hakeem Jeffries, Tim Kaine, all the top, and even Nancy Pelosi. And it was
Mm-hmm.
imperfect. It was imperfect legislation where not all Dems were part of it. Not even at that time my representative was. So it was a lot of us that came out. I wrote several op-eds about it because I felt that it was imperfect, but it was the best option to work with the Iranians involving them being able to build its first nuclear weapons program. And that was based on experiences, looking at the geopolitical issues, working with the people in the region. And that wasn't based on no book, no commentator that be out there talking whatever they acting like they experts. It was based on my experiences. I have to put that out there because our we have too many of those who don't know a thing about the Middle East, right? So 11 years, I've always been advocate going to back to even 2017 under the Trump administration. I came back out again and said,
Mm-hmm.
don't touch the Iran to the Trump administration because it's working. And even Trump's uh, Secretary of Defense at that time and State said, it is working, don't touch it. He touched it, we withdrew. Then here, as an appointee for President Biden, watching them trying to restore it was very hard because we lost leverage because Trump
Yeah.
pulled out. And then now it's up to where we are. Now that probably pretty much describes the narrative of what we're seeing right now. So fast forward to 2026, we are looking at a situation where what is cooking up between United States and Iran as a result of looking at that 14-point deal. It was not better than the JCPOA. It was not.
Okay.
And just looking at the paying them back, not really getting to the nuts and bolts and stopping them from enriched uranium or being able to effectively stop them from building its first bomb. Also, keeping up the Strait of Hormuz, they have now more control of it, and it's hard to now pull that away. So it just the terms of it were not good, and I think what happened was the Republicans were very vocal about it. They said,
Right.
"What is this? This is us. You guys are losing control of this war and working with them, and now we're considering the War Powers Resolution, and that's why that happened."
What's your take on the diaspora? I know, like trying to engage with the diaspora. I know that was when I was at State Department under the Obama administration. That was something they were trying to push forward. Maybe not so much on Middle East policy, but I did hear more about diaspora outreach as we kind of engage with different regions of the
Yeah,
world. And the diaspora, at least the Muslim community, was very vocal about our role in Gaza and very outspoken. So, what do you see in terms of like the diaspora playing a role? Not even if they're from the Middle East, but just being a Muslim, they can be Muslim from Senegal, for example, but have specific because Middle East policy is two pronged, is religious, and then you have the ethnic side of diaspora in terms of people who might be interested in that region or
yeah.
what's
No, I,
happening.
I see they're very vocal
Hmm.
about it. Some most are in favor because Obama's JCPOA proved to be more effective. So they're very vocal about it, but in terms of shaping policy, I think it's been limited. It
Hmm.
was limited uh, during the Gaza issue, and now you're seeing it. Now you're seeing it, but they gain more influence as far as shaping the discourse, but the decision making. I don't see them really at the table as much. They're there, but they're not. I think they're influential in terms of being very vocal, and so
Hmm.
everybody wants peace right now with the ongoing offense defensive missiles being fired at each other back and forth. It just continues to penetrate um, uh, damages to a lot of critical infrastructure, U.S. military bases that I've served at, also the embassies. The people have been impacted. We've lost 14, almost up to I think 14 soldiers, over 200 KIAs, those that were killed in action. So it's the diaspora. I think what they're looking at is what they have lost. Many of them don't want this because I would tell you the region wants to move on from conflicts. If
Right.
you have a region that is branded with war and conflict, guess what? That impacts investments. That impacts your economics, your tourism. They want to move on for
Hmm.
them. They want to generate money. They want to make money. They want to have tourism there. They want to get into the technological piece. They want to get into the emerging industries. That was the whole point of Saudi Arabia's 2030 project, right? To get the region to move forward to that. But when it keeps getting branded with wars and wars and wars, they lose a lot of money from that. There's a
Yeah.
lot of potential, with being able to move forward with that, with people want to do tech startups and get involved in more of the economics piece to it, but that's the problem. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, when I think about tourism, I think about Qatar and the
Yeah,
UAE, and they've
beautiful.
suffered huge loss financially. And there's also this question if whether or not leaning more towards the United States when it comes to their policy towards Israel is in their favor versus leaning more towards Iran or just staying in a neutral zone. So, can you kind of talk about how the Obama administration kind of navigated those waters, like kind of dealing with the Qataris and the UAEs and the Saudis when it comes to maintaining some type of peace and stability in that region versus what the Trump administration is doing now, and then you can also reflect on what we should be doing moving forward. Yeah.
Well, President Obama won based on one thing, I would say, involving foreign policy. Remove those troops, U.S. troops, withdraw from Iraq.
Yeah.
And and that was a big deal. And when I deployed or was serving in the Middle East after 2 years after President Obama won, what we did was focus on withdrawing from Iraq, but also simultaneously we wanted to continue building out our allies and partnerships with people with critical countries in the region, such as the Gulf region, in the rest of the Arabian Peninsula, like Jordan,
Hmm.
Egypt, Lebanon, Israel, right? So that was the whole point. Continue to have security cooperation, effective deterrence in the region, despite that we were withdrawing from from Iraq. That impacted my work because initially when I went there, I had to work very closely with the Gulf region on maintaining our partnership with mainly with Kuwait, and that's what Obama wanted to do: maintain his allies and partners, his alliance system in the Middle East. I wrote about it
Hmm.
extensively.
Hmm.
Now, uh, that was effective because when ISIS took over Iraq, about 60% or more of it in 2014, we were there to help respond to that. When the Saudis decided to initiate their war in Yemen, we were there to help them out too, simultaneously. And also, when it came to Iran, countering Iranian aggression, we worked very closely with our regional allies and partners. So that was effective as far as us being there in the region to respond to emergency crises that poses a threat to our U.S. national security.
Hmm.
Fast
No,
forward
you're.
into
Uh-huh. Go
go ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Now 2026,
Hmm.
we went into the Trump we went into the Trump administration maintaining that U.S. American regional deterrence, making sure that we were all there. Different multiple military assets were all located there, whether it's your Patriots, your bases, your camps, your U.S. troops. We were all there. And then it was contested based on after we did a preemptive strike against Iran. Iran retaliated, targeting a lot of areas that we were located and other critical areas in the region. So so that's where we are now. Now the future of this is how is U.S. presence going to look like in the Gulf region? And I just talked to Malcolm Nance about this, right? What does that deterrence? Our allies and partners even want us there? So there's these big questions, right? Because the other question is, did it really deter Iran? because they had battlefield confidence as they were continuously firing at our our bases or our locations, right? So was that effective deterrence? Some would say no, right? Where you're looking at Qatar, where we had the joint center there. You're looking
Hmm.
at the Fifth Fleet down in Bahrain. You're looking at a lot of U.S. military assets in Kuwait, right? So if you have, we're there, and then at the same time the Russians are giving, uh, you know, um, uh, grid grid coordination location grid coordination information to Iran. So I would say, looking at Obama's legacy, he did a really good job with not only maintaining that deterrence, but also using diplomacy to help resolve a critical issue simultaneously. He was a responsible um, commander in chief where he used both tools to to effectively engage in regional security there. Unlike, you're seeing the opposite here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think about Obama, because we also had, and I always have to put in my USA ID. I always throw that in there. But we did have USA
Yeah.
missions in the Middle East. From my understanding, from talking to people, a lot of the embassies are now deserted, right? A lot of our Middle East, our embassies in that region are not at their full capacity that they were before.
Yes, it's too dangerous. Prior to the preemptive strikes, it was considered a low threat area,
Yeah.
right? And let me tell you something. If we continue to have been working with the Iranians, like what we saw with John Kerry, Secretary John Kerry, I don't know if you remember, he was actually
Hmm.
working very closely with the foreign minister. If we had continued that pathway, we would not have this, because there was open talks. We were taking out fires with them. There was a deep confliction happening between us and them. If we continue that momentum, we probably would not be where we are right now. But yes, a lot
Yeah,
of these
we're in a
embassies are.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
in a
Mm-hmm.
very precarious situation. I don't know. Are Americans safer now under this new Middle East strategy versus where we were before? Because our embassies are not at full capacity. A lot of them are have been sent back home to DC and other places, and then we've left our mission. We don't have that humanitarian agency like we did before with USAID, so we're not able to effectively provide humanitarian assistance in these war-torn areas. So that makes countries skeptical of U.S. involvement. I think we've kind of like pulled back the
Yeah.
curtain of our intentions in that region, and now we have
Security environment. Right. The security environment went from low to high right now. No, it's not safe there. Not at all.
yeah.
The airspace is dangerous. And I mean, the as long as there's fragility involving the Iran deal, when you have ongoing military action, it remains unsafe. So
And let's go
that
back to because there's been a lot of criticism, and we've talked about this offline, but there's been criticism with, just even how um, Vice President, former Vice President Kamala Harris, and how in her campaign with Tony, saying that like if she would have been more pro Gaza and ending this genocide against what was happening in that region, then maybe she would have won the election, or it wouldn't have had a huge impact in her loss, her if she didn't do that. Because I know Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a article in Vanity Fair about the next black president, um, and just Kamala Harris' silent approach to this. So, can you kind of talk about like what happens behind the scenes in DC? Because I don't think a lot of people know how the foreign policy establishment works in DC. I mean, I worked at State Department and USAID, and when you look at the people who are really running Washington DC's foreign policy machine, it's not us. It's not people like us. Like if you look at who's running the Council of Foreign Relations, you look at who's running um, looking at who's working in Atlantic Council. I'm just saying names. Brookings Institute. There's very few Black professionals in those fields, and I don't even get the sense that the work that they're pushing out is more focused, has a civil rights or humanitarian focus. There's a lot of war hawks, if you will, in the foreign policy world. So, and these are my personal opinions, but just kind of want to get your stance in terms of as we move forward, what do we need to do in terms of shaking up? Because Ta-Nehisi Coates is approaching this as an academic, and he's an activist as well. But I don't know if he knows all the ins and outs of how this really goes down when it comes to implementation of foreign policy.
Well, you can look at it in different ways, but when you look at it internally in terms of the human capital, it is time for new talent. But you can bring in new talent, but you have to make sure the principles are in place, right?
Mm,
And not the entire foreign policy establishment are not war hawks. There are some that, and I
yeah.
just spoke to one, I spoke to a whole bunch of them yesterday, where they feel diplomacy and development should be the priority, not defense. And this was
Mm,
even from veterans. And I feel the same way too as well. But those that have the influence, the president's ear, right, the ones that can really get to the top, they tend to be hawkish. They are questioned when it comes to their principles in place, right? As far as but the problem was, as going back to Harris's campaign and that whole thing, is that they were not really committed to the two-state solution. It got stagnant.
mm-hmm.
The two-state solution did not reflect the um, the true essence of it in the field, especially when you had a lot of buildup of settlements being established in the West Bank, ongoing conflicts or issues in the Gaza Strip. It did not reflect what was going on in the field. And then it was so, uh, due to technology, it was so tied in with the rest of the country that there was a lot of depictions of it in on Twitter. Oh, not Twitter. Well, at the time, TikTok, to where it was feeding the hearts and minds of the consumers
Yeah.
around the world. And it was, so what happened was, when you have a White House saying one thing, and then you have these depictions being fed every day to the consumers, they're like, it's not parallel, it's not aligned. What's the truth here? And then they started really believing technology more, social media more than what was being said coming out of the White House. And so I think that that was a problem. And then two, it's coming out more and more where we had just one country that was constantly trying to get us into war, and being able to be part of something that the American people did not want. So
Right.
that's the problem. But I think social media really played a big part in this, and it did not align with what was coming out of the White House. And so when she was running, if I was her, I would have definitely engaged with states like Michigan more on this issue. I would have had people to support that find solidarity between different groups to achieve a solution on how we should approach this. I think they will. I think a lot of the activists in Michigan and other parts were ignored. That didn't work. And then going
Mm-hmm.
back to the establishment, I don't think, going back to the establishment, I don't think they really, I was told they were meeting with them, but they really weren't listening to what they were telling them as far as their implications that are being expressed as a result of the war. So you need to have the right lieutenants, captains in your administration around you in order to manage a crisis. You can't have those that lack principle, that are not really in tune with the American people. And that's the problem with Washington, D.C. They're out of touch with a lot of the outcomes of bad policies, and they
Mm-hmm.
tend to ignore it. And it was ignored. It was ignored. So we need new talent that does not disregard the concerns of the American people and take that into account and reflect in our strategic interests. And I don't know how let's see if we could get there, but some of them people have elitist mindsets where they ignore it, and you got to get them out of here. Don't recycle them; they're not worth it. You got to go.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they have shown themselves. We see the results of their bad policy decisions, and here we are. We're still at war in that region. Because I was covering Afghanistan in terms of covering how Afghan allies were being treated and being brought back to the U.S. When I was at state. So I was right at that cusp where we were trying to pull out and come into a new direction. Then we
Yeah,
got pulled
some
into
of it was
Gaza.
driven right, and some of it was driven by incompetent people. Incompetent, Then they were not your Republicans; they were Democrats, and they were in the system, and they were poorly advising the system to say just rip the Band-Aid off as
Wow.
far as withdrawing. So
Mm.
that's why I've been stressing. I don't give a damn how many followers you have online, how much you scream on your damn phone. If you want to work for government and you have no experiences, go acquire your experiences. This country right now is in a deficit when it comes to institutional knowledge and experiences. And we need to get to where we restore it with the right experiences. And not only that, with the right principles. I'm not going to take a corrupt general to run my shop, right? You got to get the right leadership in place. But we have to stop. We have to stop putting people in place because they have a high following. Enough with that. That's why we got what we have right now in the White House. We have to empower those that have the experiences and that can carry out the level of competence that is needed, because we are at a deficit right now with it.
We definitely are. I heard from, from sources that now as State Department are making people sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. I've been hearing that a lot of national security experts are now finding themselves unemployed. And this whole like Project 2025, I mean, all of this comes out of that. So, to what
Right.
extent, how much of how can we restore our government, given how brutal this whole purge has been when it comes to purging the federal workforce? That's going to be challenging.
Well,
That,
first and foremost, we have to. Unfortunately, it has to be driven out of Congress, right? And when that changes, hopefully in November, there'll be new rules in place to bring that talent back. Now, some of
hmm
these people are not going to come back. They're not.
No.
They're just like, I'm turned off. Like they don't like how they were treated. They don't feel they received any justice as far as getting thrown out. They, and then also too, it goes back to what I was saying about Columbia University.
hmm
Some of us public servants are convinced that the nature of politics has gone too extreme and now it's making its way into government and it's impacting public servants like us.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of USAID folks don't have jobs because of extremism. Let's be honest. So
Mm.
those people are gone, right? They're gone. And they're not going to want to come back because they see the nature of politics is making its way into the executive that has created all this.
Yeah, we need people to defend us, Ling. I mean, that's a whole nother story. But now that we talked about USAID, I know like this administration, they just threw us to the curb. I mean, I was with USAID I did 6 months actually, but my husband was a USA diplomat, so I would say I've been in USA family for 15 years. So
Thank you for your
yeah, I mean, I thought this was going to be a long-term career, but here we are. So, what's your perspective in terms of how the Obama administration managed development assistance and how it could, how it was able to implement, how foreign assistance help the U.S. government in terms of shaping up our foreign policy objectives in the global South and developing countries, versus the way this administration is treating foreign assistance as more transactional. And what are the long term and short term consequences or advantages of this? It's totally different approach. I would say Obama kind of expanded USAID in terms of its programming, and then the second Trump administration just dismantled it, and yeah.
Well, Obama did what was a policy continuity
Mm,
situation where most presidents were in favor of it, right? You even have Republicans where I was told by a former USA employee they received more assistance from the Republicans than the Dems. So it was
hmm.
always a foreign policy continuity item that we must value our foreign assistance. And in fact, Obama during I think it was it was going back to 2010. He actually was in favor of reducing the defense budget as a way to relieve some of that money so it can go to domestic issues as well as balance it out with diplomacy and development, right? He saw the value of that. He said, well, this defense budget is just getting out of hand, right? And so he did what Clinton did, where he reduced it, and to be able to use that revenue for other sources of within the government. And I think it was in favor of also to help give more money to defense and diplomacy. I mean, to diplomacy and development. And unfortunately, uh, you know, USAID has been operating under a very limited budget of less than 1% of the federal budget,
Right.
and had to learn to do more with less,
Hmm.
which is very unfortunate. I mean, I worked with a lot of them. They had great ideas, great things to do, but very limited on how they can maneuver. And and so I think with Obama, what we can learn is that we need to look at the future of our foreign assistance. Is it worth bringing USAID back? And if it is USAID, and if it is, how does that look? When there's chaos, there's opportunities. Maybe as far as we know that USAID has some issues too, but those
Well, all
the
these agencies do.
benefits, yeah, all these agencies do, and the benefits
Hmm.
far exceed the costs, right? We don't want to say that it was the costs were far exceed the benefits. No, but we can use this opportunity to rebuild it to where it can be more of an effective institution. So I think we learned from Obama, like many other presidents before uh, 47, is to continue the existence of it. I'm hearing today, not too long ago, that some of the programs are under state, where some of them FSOs do not know what they're doing as far as managing them. Some of it has gone under USDA,
Yeah.
where they have the presence abroad, but they're having a hard time managing it. So, what does this look like moving in the future? And I think we have to just make sure that Congress works on that, moving along, and what that looks like. And and what's very important is justice, as far as those that have been thrown out. Um, Look at the employment law, how to bring them back, how to look back and give it back to them, because that was very ugly and what had happened to them. So that matters too as
Yeah.
well. But yeah,
No, it's definitely ugly, and this is my way of recovering by talking about it. But
yeah, no
y-
worries.
but when it comes to, so I'm not, so I've been back in DC after serving abroad at USA mission in Nigeria, and honestly, I'm not hearing from Democrats. And I talked to congressional leaders. I've gotten a chance to talk to Chris Van Hollen and Joaquin Castro, Representative Castro.
Yeah,
I'm not hearing like this bona fide, we're going to bring USA back. I think they have been so overwhelmed with what's happened domestically that they have not really, I'm not seeing politicians chew gum and walk at the same time when it comes to dealing with the foreign policy and domestically. So Now we have like these healthcare deals. We have Ebola on the rise. All of this is happening on the backdrop of the World Cup. And like, what do you see in terms of what the Trump administration is doing versus how Obama was dealing with the Ebola crisis? Because Obama had to deal with the Ebola
Oh
crisis too,
yeah.
but there, at least there was like a USA presence. I would say USA was kind of like our personal defense in terms of on the development side. Wasn't if you were to for people to try to understand what the USA role would have been if the agency was still in existence. So yeah, I just kind of want you to hear your thoughts about how we're managing this Ebola crisis. How scared should we be? We got through with COVID. Some of us lost our family members. I mean, this is very fresh for us,
Well,
and
I
it's
would
getting
say
worse.
this. Well, this is a very good question because when I was in Iraq and there was a huge humanitarian assistance effort happening. Well, I was on the defense side, and what I learned from observing my commander and in an operational environment, that's why I said experiences matter. My commanding general always had a senior USAID employee or advisor sitting right next to him.
Mhm.
Why? Because we're not really trained to do humanitarian assistance. We have civil affairs that understand the scope of it, but that's not our job in USG. That is the lead of USAID and state. So going back to Obama, it responded to Ebola. What was fascinating though is that he did send a military contingency group, contingency to Africa in responding to Ebola.
Mhm.
It was a health security group, but in DoD was involved, but USAID was too, and they were more in the lead in advising the military as far as how do we respond to this. They did not
Mhm.
just go by themselves. So this is that interagency experiences that we must take into account. And what's bad about the American culture is that they think defense can resolve every single global issue you could think of out there. No, they cannot. And if they're part of it, they're not. Especially when it comes to responding to health issues, they're not by themselves. They are with USAID. They're with state and other critical federal agencies. So Obama's example of responding to Ebola is a plausible one because it was an interagency approach with defense and USAID, but USAID was definitely part of that lead. And what you're seeing now in 2026 is a lack of response. And if we do respond to it, you'll probably have the Defense Department do it, right? And that's
Mhm.
not the right way to approach it. We need USAID and other critical offices or representation involved because they have been trained to lead in those type of efforts and respond in those type of global issues. Mm.
No, you're right. I mean, and speaking of USA, I mean, they're not even hiring us back. A lot of USA employees feel like we have been blacklisted from the administration. So when you talk about like people who are needed on the ground to deal with this crisis, we're not
Yeah.
first in line when it comes to being hired. So that's really unfortunate. That's a loss for the American people. I did see on,
Well,
hmm
look in the long term. It may not be like that for a long time, right? It's just
hmm
that's the moment right now. I do feel this country will break out of that unfortunate situation in terms of blackballing employees. But look at it as total in the long run. I think that's going to dismantle.
Yeah, no, this Ebola crisis is quite scary. I mean, I did see something on the news where they were saying that Trump is seeking 1.4 billion in Ebola funding from Congress. So we'll see how that shapes out. And then I know 800 million, and they're looking at bringing in 800 million in humanitarian assistance. So to deal with the crisis. So we'll see what happens. But basically, in my opinion, I think Americans are basically relying on the World Health Organization and the African governments to kind of manage this crisis. Where it's not like we have
Well,
people on the ground.
right. Well, the problem is this too.
Mm-hmm.
The American people have to understand what's going on, understand the role of our government when it comes to responding to crises like the spread of diseases or viruses. And the problem is which I don't agree um, with this approach, where I would say I disagree with Obama. I don't know if he even knew this exists, but there's a statue out there that prevents the American people from understanding the role of USAID or foreign assistance. So when it was dismantled, a lot of Americans didn't even know what it was. That's the first time they've heard about it. And then when they heard about the role, they said, I don't really care. In fact, one person told me, "Oh, why are you doing more for other countries and not for us? I have a pothole to fix." Right? So with that being said, that was what we say in the Army, we really shot ourselves in the foot, where we made the American people so uneducated about the role or the importance of foreign assistance. So now going back to Trump responding to this and that, and it's good if they're responding to it and they're sending it, but the American people have to connect that dot, saying, whoa, now we have this happening. You got rid of USAID. Whoa, that was counterproductive. And then it was predictable, because we know another disease is gonna come out from somewhere. We know it.
And
We
this one
know.
doesn't have a vaccine. That's the scary part. There's no vaccine for
Exactly.
Ebola.
It's predictable. It's inevitable that something is going to spread again, like the pandemic, right? It could spread again. So we need to have the tools in place, the national security agencies in place to prevent that from happening. We have to, as Americans, connect that dot. Connect it.
Mm-hmm.
Connect it. There's preventative tools out there that our government has made to ensure our safety in terms of our health security. And USAID was in place in doing so. Why would you want your government to destroy that? Only reason why they were willing to accept that, because they didn't know the role of USAID. And we have to we have to fix that problem. Mm-hmm.
No, we have to fix a lot of problems, and sadly, the Department of Education is dismantled too. So that is going to be a challenge for us moving forward. But let's talk about Cuba. I had a chance a few weeks ago to attend this press conference. It was led by civil rights activists, mostly Black American, who were talking about. They did a site visit trip to talk in Cuba. It was about a delegation of maybe about 20 people. They met with Cuban officials. They talked to Cubans to talk about just the humanitarian crisis that's happening in that country. And now there's this oil embargo. You have Mexico trying to send ships of oil to Cuba, and that's of course making Trump upset about that. And then Cuba's looking at doing some economic reforms and moving a little bit away from communist practices. So it's just a lot going on in Cuba. And that's another humanitarian crisis that is
Yeah.
that's just maybe 90 miles from Miami. Do we want
Yeah.
Cuba to fall apart like that and just destabilize the Caribbean? That's supposed to be America's vacation hub, if you will. And now we can't even go down to Jamaica. And I mean, there's more to that, but just for people to kind of like relate to it, Cuba is important. We don't want to destabilize Caribbean. That's just next door. It's one thing to have
Right.
destabilization in the Middle East, but it's something else when it's like right next to you. So can you talk about the Obama administration? I know they opened up the embassy at one point in Cuba, and that was like a really big deal. And then talk about like what the Miami Cuban diaspora, what they're doing, like how they're kind of like strangholding the U.S. Cuban policy, and yeah, just kind of want. There's a lot there. It's a lot to unpack.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Going back to the Obama administration, another legacy point is that during the time looking at Cuba, what we do as foreign policy experts is that we calculate a decision and we look at the decision on going back to cost versus benefits. Was the ongoing closeout relationship with Cuba really beneficial to American foreign policy? And during that time, what we noticed is no. And there were several reasons. It was creating more costs than benefits when it came to commercial diplomacy, when it came to cultural connection. We even had our competitors and adversaries running around there, like trying to build well, not that time, but trying to build a spy base. The Russians and the Cubans. It just did not really create more benefits. I mean, did not create more costs. No, it did not. Us closing out created more costs than benefits. So President Obama also wanted to restore U.S. reputation in the region, where it was at an all-time low, because we were so focused on the Middle East since 9/11. We have neglected that region for a very long time. So he wanted to restore U.S. global policy, and then they spoke to so many leaders in the region saying, how do I do that? They said, restore relations with Cuba. Going back to Miami. Miami, of course, has a huge Cuban diaspora, and there's a generational issue too, where, of course, they don't want relations there. They want to keep it closed. The United States do not engage with Cuba, especially the Castros. But there was also some growing support of the next generation, which I can say I've seen this in the Middle East too, where they were like, no, let's try it out. So, but it never really dissolved, where it was like, oh, the whole entire Miami was like, yeah, go meet with Cubans. No, it stayed there saying, no, do not. President Obama made the decision to do so. He actually came in. He visited Cuba with an interagency high delegation from his administration. So you had people from State Department, Defense, Homeland Security. He even had celebrities like Jackie Robinson's family. I mean, a huge delegation with, a huge delegation meet with the Cuban leadership, mainly Raul Castro, who's right now up for a warrant for his arrest. So that opened up. Eventually, we opened up the embassy, and in fact, when Obama did it, President Trump was in favor of Obama opening up Cuba. Of course, Rubio, which is very significant to know, was not in favor of it, and Ted Cruz at the time. So it stayed open up until I would say the relationship hit a rock bottom. When it came to the sonic attacks towards foreign service officers. I think that really strained the relationship. And then I think beyond that point, just hit rock bottom. I would say even the President Biden didn't really reinvigorate that relationship too. It was yeah, and it goes back. I think it goes back to that old Cold War mentality. It's just still there for some of these people that we put in the presidency. I think Obama just was one of them that did not. He was very forward thinking as far as looking at that country. And so yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
back to the humanitarian. I'll just make this real quick. The humanitarian issue there is really bad. Where as a result of the oil blockade in Venezuela. And I don't know if you saw that there was a huge earthquake there yesterday.
Yeah, just
big problem. But that blockade has pretty much generated a lot of economic, security, humanitarian challenges for the local people in Cuba. So they're at a huge vulnerability right now in terms of humanitarian assistance. And at the same time, we saw the United States pretty much knock on Raul Castro's door and say, we have a warrant for your arrest. So I think what that happened, it generated concerns from the Cuban leadership to reach out to potential allies in the United States, which you're talking about, that delegation that went to go see them, to figure out what's going to look like moving forward as far as the United States. They're very worried. Of course, you can't take out of your mind what happened with Maduro, and they feel the same thing and will happen with them.
Yeah, it's really putting us in a more precarious situation. I mean, we, like you said, at this current policy, this Cold War policy, it's pretty outdated. I don't, there's, like you said, there's more costs than benefits. We still have Cubans fleeing the country. So now we have a migration crisis. We still have a humanitarian crisis in that country with these oil embargoes. And now you're trying to get rid of the president. And it's just, I mean, that's just going to be a mess like everything else, sadly. I
Yes,
think we need a
Karen,
new, that's what the, hmm
well, I don't know if you remember what I just said.
hmm
President Trump was in favor of what Obama did. Why all of a sudden he's not? Is because look at your current national security advisor and secretary of state.
hmm
He's running the show in this, and he is definitely. It's called the Miami foreign policy right now.
mm,
He's running the show. He has no interest of rebuilding relations with them. He wants to get rid of the Castros. He is the guide in this light right now. He's guiding this. So I think when it comes to the level of influence in the national security team, Rubio is definitely getting his way as far as how U.S. foreign policy should look involving Cuba. In fact, they put out an executive order on what are their interests about almost, I would say, 9 months ago. You can Google it as far as
hmm
what it looks like, and it sounds just like Rubio. It sounds just like Rubio,
Yeah,
and
can
which
you?
is the exact
No, you're
of
right. I
Obama's
mean,
legacy.
yeah, I mean, this has been rich, just kind of like going around the world and just kind of understanding what Obama's legacy was and what Trump is doing now, and just kind of wrapping up, kind of reflecting on my meeting with the civil rights leaders and Cuba, and just our discussions about USA and Iran and so forth. Can you talk about? I guess my last question is, what do you see needs to happen moving forward in terms of how we shaping our U.S. foreign policy, and how can civil rights leaders play a bigger role if we're talking about principle? Because we talked about the American Grand Strategy and how and what was left in what was in the strategy and what was left out of the strategy. So just kind of pulling all of these topics together, if you could summarize what you think our policy should be moving forward as we move into the election season.
Yes, thank you for the questions because this is exactly what I'm working on every day. Our future American strategy or grand strategy should reflect, first of all, principles that are adaptive to the 21st century, but are also reflective of the American people. And there's a lot of different principles that are out there, but I would say the number one right now is stop using defense as the first option and making it more of a last resort. We need to go back to that. We really need to go back to that. Also, looking at the international rule based order, which we've been operating on since the post Cold War era, is that still useful? Do we need to refine it? Example of the role of international institutions. We utilize the United Nations, right? But is the United Nations really effective right now? I would say yes. Some would say it needs help. The role of NATO. Where could we refine it? Where could we fix the role of NATO? Where could we fix the role of Woods institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, right? The World Trade Organization. Look at the World Trade Organization. Has the World Trade Organization effectively stopped the United States from imposing global tariffs or the Chinese malpractices around the world? No. So there needs to be refinement in terms of looking at the international rule-based order on how it could be more effective. And
hmm
you can even be open to say, hey, do we need to throw this whole thing away? But we have to look at that as a principle set too. And then also looking at the respective sovereign states, right? Are we really respecting other sovereign states in terms of their existence? Are we respecting the international law? So that's part of it too as well. Another thing we have to take into account is the economic security aspect of it. The affordability crisis is going to be an enduring experience for the American people. An American grand strategy should address that. And
hmm
in terms of our foreign policy, we should find ways on how do we work with the American people to where they could be more economically protected, and how it can help them in terms of their pocketbooks. But it should not be transactional, right? When we are engaged with other countries around the world. When we look at our future U.S. global engagement, right? There's always that always comes out when it comes to a new presidency. The future of U.S. global engagement. How do we engage with the 21st century international system, mainly our alliances? Do we have the same alliance system that we had coming out of the Cold War than we have now? We might not. So our future strategy needs to figure that out too. The future of our traditional and non-traditional alliance system, right? But going back to the economic security piece, I think that's going to be the core part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and really investing in the American people. American people need investments, whether it's more better jobs, right? Civic education, economic
Mm-hmm.
literacy, investing in STEM. If we are not right at home, we cannot project ourselves well globally. We have to fix this at home. And we need to have a real conversation when it comes to the nature of our politics. The political nature right now includes extremism, and that is to our detriment. How do we fix that too as well? So we have a lot of work to do, but those are different components that we're looking at right now, and there's more to it too. Whether looking at even the defense budget. The defense budget is projected to be $1.17 trillion at an all-time
Wow.
high.
Wow.
Does it need an audit? Why is it so much? We have to fix that problem too in terms of looking at our revenue. Some of that money could be used to help address the affordability crisis, the
Mm-hmm.
food insecurity that's happening in this country. So we need a strategy that really energizes the government and the American people to look at the core principles that are adaptive, that are reflective, that are ethical, and then also that helps restore the American dream. Many people feel that they can't, right? And if we don't fix this, we are very weak abroad, and that's really important moving forward.
No, you're right. I mean, all of this is important. Just we have to fix at home before we're able to address all of these global issues and for people to take us seriously, to really see global our US global leadership is a reliable institution. We have to fix what's at home. So yeah, thanks everyone. I'm glad we had a good conversation. I hope everyone
My
got a
brother,
little bit of taste of US foreign policy from a woman's perspective. Just really excited to have this conversation with you, Asha. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us today.
bro. Okay, talk to you.
Thank you. All right.
Uh-oh. Then
Oh, really? Let's see.